afternoon. My name is Briaja.
My name is Kalia Glanton.
I'm Kansas Lackey.
My name is Brittany Kelly.
My name is Nadia Meadows.
And we will be presenting on neurochemical release and chemical transmission, GABA.
Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the electric change that happens inside of the basic neuron. As you can see, I have drawn up here the structure of a neuron. You can see it has the cell body, the cell nucleus. These little branch-like things right here are the dendrites, and the information moves down through the axon, which is protected by the light. And then here are the axon terminals. The information will leave the axon terminals and be released to the synapse, and then will be caught by another dendrite receiving the information. And then here are the axon terminals. The information will leave the axon terminals and be released to the synapse, and then will be caught by another dendrite receiving the information. GABA is mostly an inhibitory synapse, but can sometimes, under certain circumstances, resort back to excitatory. GABA synapses in the brain bind to specific receptors in the plasma membrane of the pre-postsynaptic and the neural processes. This process allows for the flow of either negatively charged chloride or positively charged potassium ions out the cell. Usually this results in a negative change in the transmembrane potential stemming from hyperpolarization. GABA is an inhibitory transmitter, meaning it decreases the neuron's action potential. When the action potential slows below threshold potential, it will not excite close by neurons. Excitatory postsynaptic potential, or EPSP, of one single excitatory synapse is not enough to reach threshold of a neuron. When the ESPs are created in quick succession, their change combined. The sum of these charges create an action potential activating inhibitory synapses like GABA. In return, the resting potential turns negative. This hyperpolarization is called inhibitory postsynaptic potential, or IPSP. Activation of IPSP makes resting potential of the neuron negative. IPSP may also prevent ESPs from triggering the action potential. The sum of both of these determine whether a neuron's charge is sufficient enough to pass the threshold. Moving on to the commonly used neuron markers of GABA. GABAergic neurons generate gamma aminobutyric acid. That's also the official name for GABA. One of the two inhibitory neurotransmitters in the central nervous system. GABA1 is a transporter of all the cell membranes that move inside the GABA walls. GABA's receptor 1 and 2 are metatropic transmitters receptors of GABA that are linked via G proteins to potassium channels. GABA receptor 1 and GABA receptor 2 assemble as heterodimes in neural membrane. GABA 65 is a KDA isomorphic glutamate decarbylase that catalyzes the formation of GABA from glutamate. GABA 67 KDA isomorphic glutamate decarbylase, unlike GABA 65, also expressed in the pancreas.
Referring back to postsynaptic receptors, here we have the presynaptic neuron. The information travels down the axon terminal. Within the terminal, we have the transmitters that are fused within the vesicles. Information travels down within the synaptic cleft. It binds to the receptors, potentially creating their own action potential within the postsynaptic neuron.
Okay, so now we're going to find out what is a neurochemical. So, a neurochemical is an organic molecule such as serotonin or dopamine and other factors that contributes to the neural activity. So guys, let's go over a little bit of review. What is an ion? So ions are atoms or molecules with an electric charge due to a loss or gain of one or more electrons. So in the nervous system, we have a bunch of ions, but we're going to talk about 3 to be specific. We're going to talk about sodium, which has a positive charge. We're going to talk about potassium, which also has a positive charge. And we're going to talk about chloride. which has a negative charge. And these are ions. So you may wonder, how are signals sent? All cells have a membrane called the phospholipid bilayer, which is right here. The phospholipid bilayer separates the inside from the outside of the cell. Okay? Located on this membrane we call the phospholipid bilayer are different channels that allow the ions to move freely in and out the cell. Okay? Inside the cell, we have higher concentrations of potassium than what we do outside the cell, which has a higher concentration of chloride and sodium. So ions move in and out the cell due to the fact that they're trying to balance their cells out and balance the concentration levels out in and outside the cell. Potassium moving in and out of the cell is referred to as the equilibrium potential. So let's go over resting potential. When a cell is not sending any signals at all, this is referred to as the resting potential. No signals. So, most neurons have a resting potential at negative 70 millivolts, which is kind of low compared to a battery who has about maybe negative 1500 millivolts. So, resting potential is always negative inside the cell. So at that time, there are higher levels of chloride in the cell than anything else. When a neuron is stimulated, the negative potential in a neuron can either be made positive or it can be made negative depending on what's actually stimulated it. So if it's made less negative in a sense, the neuron reaches a level where it's called the threshold. And then after that, after reaching the threshold, this ultimately creates action potential, and that will be triggered. So when we're talking about neurochemical release, neurotransmitter release, let's talk about exocytosis. Exocytosis is the process in which a vesicle containing a large particle that fuses with the cell membrane. So, vesicle containing a large particle works its way to fuse with the cell membrane in order to remove the particles from the cell. So they become fused together to work to remove the particle from the cell. How does it work? So the vesicle containing the large particle, it inches its way towards the cell membrane, becoming infused with the cell membrane in order for it to remove it. Eventually, the cell membrane opens up and releases the particle that contains it. This process requires a lot of energy. So let's talk about action potentials as it relates to neurotransmitter release. Different channels open and close at the terminals when action potential AP arrive. Action potential is when positive ions interact with negative ions. This causes the voltage to rise, as we explained in the last video, to negative 70 millivolts. It causes it to go from negative 70 millivolts to around about negative 55 millivolts. This causes a balance to switch up. When it reaches the threshold voltage, as we talked about, this causes the channels to open up, but only and only when it reaches that certain value. So when certain channels are then open, this allows for the positive sodium, ions to rush into the cell, causing a spike in the electrical potential. So when the inside of the cell becomes more positive than the outside of the cell, this here is referred to as depolarization. Then signals move in a specific order up and down the axon, relying on each other to keep sending those signals and to keep them going in that systematic order. After this is completed, the positive charge channels begin to close just as fast as they open. So it's like a quick transaction. As the channels close, the cell works to pump the excess sodium back out using the ion pumps that are put in place in the membrane. This process then starts repolarization. A small picture of neurochemical release as it reaches the threshold. So at about 70, it reaches that threshold, sending that spike up, that movement, onto depolarization. Right here is where the action potential reaches, causing it to come back down to go into polarization, coming back down into resting potential state, which is also known as hyperdepolarization, until it balances back.
So I will be picking back up on GABA and where it goes. Okay, so GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter that is widely distributed in the neurons of the cortex. Neurons in every region of the brain uses GABA. GABA has a hand in learning and memory. It is prominent in regions of the brain like the hippocampus, which is known to be involved with memory formation. Research suggests that it helps the brain reshape its neural connections. However, its role in memory is not simple. Evidence suggests that GABA both helps and hurts formation of memories. GABA is used to suppress circuits in the brain that cause anxiety. Diazepam, also known as Valium, is widely used to increase levels of GABA in the brain. During feelings of fear, pain, or stress, certain groups of neurons can become hyperactive. GABA steps in, soothing those neurons to a lower state of stimulation, causing a feeling of calm and relaxation. Sleep is also one of GABA's foremost priorities. GABA levels increase during sleep. When energy levels are low, GABA is high. GABA is also involved in maintaining the internal body clock that sets circadian rhythms. Growth hormones, which are essential for building and repairing the body, surges during sleep. So GABA facilitates all of these functions through its facilitation of sleep. GABA also appears to play a role in female reproductive functions, perhaps because hormonal cycles may sync with the body clock. Now I will be discussing GABA as a receptor. So the GABA receptor is connected to a chloride ion channel, allowing more chloride ions to enter the cell, therefore making the membrane less likely to depolarize. Benzodiazepines such as Valium will bind to a GABA receptor site and act by enhancing the effect of GABA on GABA A. Thus, the Valium acts as a minor tranquilizer, causing calm and relaxation.
Today I'm going to be talking about GABA and its effects on the body. Caffeine inhibits GABA release. GABA normally acts to dampen the amount of dopamine released in the brain, which is why alcohol has a strong effect on GABA, because as you know, if you've had alcohol before, it does slow down your reaction and things like that. GABA is a neurotransmitter which reduces energy levels and calms everything down, which again goes back to alcohol and how it affects the body. GABA contributes to motor control, vision, and many other cortical functions. Okay, like I said before, GABA has a big effect on motor control, and it has a big effect on vision of the eye. That's the eye, and it has a lot of effect on cortical functions. And this brings me to my next point of has a big effect on Huntington's disease. Huntington's disease is an inherited disorder that damages specific areas of the brain, resulting in movement difficulties as well as cognitive.
So let's recap. We talked a little bit about how the synapses is the junction point between two neurons and how information travels down the axon terminal to potentially create its own action potential. We also discussed how GABA, which is an inhibitory transmitter that is widely distributed through the neurons of the cortex, and how it contributes to motor control, vision, and many other cortical functions. and it also regulates anxiety. It's important to remember that all of these things play an important role in the way that we communicate. Also, through this, we can gain a deeper understanding of cellular processes involved in neural communication and become aware of breakdowns through neurotransmitter release that may contribute to brain disorder and disease. Thanks for listening.